basically, let me explain a little bit what the machine is, a little bit of the history. On the left side, you see the actual synthesizer. It's a modular synthesizer from 1976. It's build it yourself, do it yourself synthesizer that was distributed, the plans were distributed with a magazine called Formant. It was a German magazine. And it was all about, you know, modular synthesizers, electronic music, which was the big thing, like in the mid-70s, of course, you know, beards and synthesizers, you know, and this kind of stuff. So basically, what this thing is, you could subscribe to the magazine, and when you are a subscriber, you would get like a plan, a detailed plan, and of the front panel and how you solder one of those modules. And module synthesizer, because it's, you know, it's made of little small modules that can all do different things. So in that case, it wasn't me. I was not old enough at that time, but I found this in Vienna, and a guy really did it. It was actually twice as big. It was done not really good. It was done really bad. He must have been really young and eager to do something at that time. So it was sitting, I bought it, and it was sitting around in my studio for like years and years, and it was not really working, and I merely used it. And at some point I decided that I want to give it a try and make it smaller, select the modules that really work, and we took everything apart and actually did the whole work again, cleaned the prints and soldered the thing again. Still, it's a very rough piece. It's not really comparable to like a Moog modular system or an ARP 2600. Yeah, it's a more rough, special, do-it-yourself modular synthesizer, but that's what I like, and that's what makes it a little bit special for me. On the right side, I come to this then later, on the right side, everything you see here is relatively new, and it's still being built today. On top here we have an analog sequencer. It's a 16-step sequencer. Some of you might know Döpfer sequencers, or there's also some other sequencers. Also in software, there are a couple of emulations of step sequencers. So this is one which is built from a guy in Germany called Sebastian Niesen in Munich. He used to do equipment for Kraftwerk as well. He's doing this sequencer now for a couple of years. I think he kind of stopped now, but it's basically still around and available. Then here is a filter bank, which basically controls an extra output for the synthesizer. It's an extra, and this here is custom made to fit for this configuration. It's basically an input-output mixer where I can sum up some signals, and down here we have an output, and we have a very stylish VU meter. But it's actually really nice, because sometimes when you play with it, you don't really know what is coming from where, and then you look at the thing, and then you know, okay, here's coming this, and here's coming this. So it's actually kind of useful. Basically, back to the synthesizer. Here you can see, in this case, we have 4 VCOs. A VCO is a voltage-controlled oscillator. If there are any questions at any point, say, what is a VCO? What is a VCO? Okay. An oscillator basically makes a waveform in order to be heard. There are different waveforms that we can select, you know, like a square wave, a sine wave, a sawtooth, something, you know, this kind of stuff can be selected here. And we have 4 of those oscillators, and we have 2 filters. I'm coming to this in a second. And basically in this configuration here, the synthesizer is split in the middle. So I'm having an output for this side of the synthesizer and an output for this side of the synthesizer. So, and that's also why we have 2 VU meters here. Okay, let's start really, really easy with the VCO. Basically the VCO here generates a wave. Basically, when you press here, I can just trigger or fire like one of those oscillators. So what I can do is here, just to demonstrate, I can just trigger here a waveform, which at the moment is this part here. Okay, and so as I said, I can select various waveforms, and of course I can mix them. Like for example, this is a sine wave. We got a square wave, for example, for the contrary, and various kinds of sawtooth. So basically, this alone makes the tone. Of course, this is the tuning. We can adjust certain things as a bandwidth for the square wave. So basically, this is what the VCO does. Some of them are a little more advanced. Some of them are pretty simple. This is a pretty simple one. You can, of course, mix the different waveforms. Like let's say I want a really deep, nice bass, like this. But I want a certain crunch to it. I can just mix these two waveforms. Clear? Any question on the oscillator? Yeah.
Thanks. I was thinking that the oscillator have only one waveform, actually per oscillator, but it seems that you can switch like 5 of them at the same time.
Yes, in this model, I mean, there are certain ones. There are like oscillators that can just generate one waveform at a time. In this case, you have more possibilities, which is, of course, a little bit easier actually to make a sound that you want.
So if you have 4 oscillators,
yeah,
and each of them can produce simultaneously 5 different waveforms at a time, so you can, like, say, have 20 waveforms.
Yes, available at the same time, of course.
At the same time.
Yes.
And can you mix? Like, do you have some knob that mixes through signed? No. At one oscillator, but you can mix through.
You can just switch it on and switch it off. That's why I said, like, basically, actually, I have only 4 oscillators. But they can be, you know, I can just select the waveforms here. I cannot really like mix them together. What I can mix is the 4 oscillators, the amount of the 4 oscillators, but I cannot mix the amount of the waveforms in one oscillator. So that's a really, it's quite a cheap solution, but it's better than actually just have one waveform per oscillator. So yeah. Okay, so basically I got 4 of them. And what you see here is up here is an envelope. So that means if I'm triggering my oscillator here, I have a way of making a certain way the sound will go. We have an attack, a decay, a sustain, and a release. So what does that mean? Attack means how long it will take until the sound will actually come. You know, from the first moment of trigger, how long it will take until the oscillator will play. If I put it like this, it's just a little blob. You know. Then we have the decay, which means how long will it sound. The sustain means how long it will hold. How long it will hold until it reaches its highest position. And the release just means how long it will be there until I went away from the knob. So with these 4 little controls, I can basically shape the way the sound comes through. So I can like put a long release and a long attack, or like. No. In this case, on this side here, I have only one envelope, and both of the oscillators are going through the same envelope. In a little bit more advanced systems, the envelope is what I just explained. The envelope means how the sound is shaped. Yeah? So I can show it again. I have the attack. Coming later, coming earlier. I have the decay, that's the time the sound will take until it reaches its highest amplitude. Sustain means how long it will stay there. And the release means like how long it will sound after I've pushed the button. So, that basically works here for this part, and it works here for this part. But I have a second envelope here that is working only on the filter. So that brings us to the subject of filter. But I think for this, that I don't have to press this, we will just go to the sequencer and just have it running by itself. Yeah, it's this machine. This machine. Like a lot of the old analog synthesizers, is controlled by control voltage, by CV, and gate. Control voltage means before the times of MIDI, everybody remembers the times of MIDI. Even before the times of MIDI, there had to be a way, when you put a keyboard up to this, I don't have a keyboard now, when you put up a keyboard up to this, there had to be a way to tell actually the oscillator and all the rest of the friends here actually what they should play when I press a key. So how did they do that? They found out that they can apply little voltages, like I think it was like 5 volts, and you know, like different machine had different kind of systems as well. So when I press a key, I send a little signal to this that tells him actually when will the sound play and how high it will play. So that was the CV and gate system. The CV tells it how high it should play, gives it a value, like from 0 to plus 5 volt or something like this. And the trigger actually says when the event is taking place. So what I have here with these 2 cables, this is the CV here, green, yeah, really easy, and this is the gate. So this sequencer here has an output that tells which tone should play, and it has an output, a trigger output that would tell when the tone will play. So we will just start it now, and then we move along with this. So basically what we hear now again is our oscillator that we heard before. So basically, just a second. So basically, now what I did before, with my finger on this knob, the sequencer is doing. I have 3 rows here on the sequencer. The first row gives me the pitch of the note. Oh, sorry. Excuse me, just a sec, please. Okay, sorry. I have having a little problem with the sequence here. I'm sorry for that. Was a little bit in a rush today in the morning. I couldn't really prepare. Okay, I will fix this out. For now, it's good. So this is basically just triggering our node, and as you can see here, we can have this with the envelope like we did before. Make it a short sound, make it a long sound, and now this oscillator can be here on this side, accompanied by a second. And we can mix these two together. So it's basically kind of like two voices playing together on this side. So we find a nice kind of sound, way they sound together. And now this, what's going on here, all the sound, all the waveforms, they're gonna be sent through the filter. So with electronic music, probably the most important thing, the most important invention is probably the filter, because that's what actually makes it sound interesting and makes it sound cool. Because when you modulate, you're probably not going to turn around on the frequency, but you're going to turn around a lot on the filter. And this is happening here on this side. So a filter basically gives you the possibility to, there are certain types of filters. You can have, let's say, like a low pass filter. That means that everything low will pass and everything high will be cut away. So that means if I move along here, I can check out how much amount I want to have from a high frequency and how much low there is. A band pass filter gives you the ability to cut everything away below and above, and a high pass basically does it with the high frequency. So basically you have three parts where you can decide, and you can of course also mix that. So, when I have my filter here, what I can do is I can apply to all of these things, I can apply modulation, which means you see here, up here, we have a LFO, which is also an oscillator, like the ones that we hear, but this oscillator is basically not meant to be heard audible, but it's a modulation tool. So that means you can see here, this is actually the frequency here that you can see. No, we can't. Can somebody see something up there? No. Here you can see this little red light here. You can see this is actually the frequency this oscillator is producing. Again, you have a couple of different waveforms. In that case, you don't switch them, and they're not meant to be heard, but they are modulation. They're here for the modulation of various things. So the easiest way to demonstrate this is by putting this into the filter. Up here, I have a knob, so I can basically assign just with the cable. I just cable this to this LFO here, and when I have it running, I can modulate the filter with this LFO. So you see this frequency. This here will modulate only the filter here. I can do also the same thing with the oscillator. And that will affect the frequency of the oscillator. Both together. This one basically here from the frequency stays the same because I'm not modulating it. So that actually can be done with very different inputs here. So I can take an LFO, put it to the filter. I can take an LFO, put it to the oscillator. So I can manipulate without doing this here. So basically, we know what the oscillator does. We kind of know what the filter does. There is an envelope that shapes our sound as we play it, and we have different kinds of modulation, which is LFOs, for example, different kinds of LFOs, and then we have other modulations like a ring modulator. That means we can basically take an oscillator and then mix those two oscillators together. Need more cables here, and then we feed it back into the filter actually. So what I'm doing here now is, sorry for the tick. I know it's extremely annoying, but it's the only thing I can come up with now at the moment. You can hear now that I like mix the frequencies of these two together and put them through the ring modulation. It means all the frequencies that I do here gonna also infect the other frequency. So that's also a kind of other modulation possibility. Yes.
So you have both sounds, so you could get two different frequencies going, for example. So you got two different notes going, and then you put them into the ring modulation. So then when they're altered, you keep the difference in sound, but they're both altered together. That's what.
Right.
Sorry, it's just
Right.
Understood you.
Yes. The thing is, like you see here on this. Can we see it? Yeah. Can we see it here? You take this two frequencies or whatever. It can also be like a frequency, and it can be like an audio signal on the other side. You put them together.
Yeah.
And
So it could be anything.
yes, and you mix them together, and then you can grab them up here. And there's another external input here where you can, for example, put in like a beat or a voice or whatever, and mix it together with the waveform.
So that'd pretty much mix it for you, wouldn't it?
Makes it what?
Like, because say you had the drums and those two things by themselves, they might sound like they're coming from very different places, and then if you put them through that, it would sort of make them sound like they're.
No, it's not so much like a mixer, like where you mix something together. It's more like a modulation. So the frequency of the oscillator will affect the way like the audio signal sounds. It will like mix these frequencies together.
Yep.
I can show it to you maybe with some noise here. I have like some white noise here, and if I take here a frequency. Now what I hear here is a noise together with the frequency of the oscillator. Random noise. And when I take this here with another frequency, it will sound totally different. Okay, let me explain the sequencer really quick. Basically, the sequencer is a 16-step sequencer. That means we have 16 events here and 16 events in one bar. Let's put it that way for the very first easy situation. And so at the moment that we actually have a time scale, I'm synchronizing this sequencer with this drum machine. So basically, I'm just pressing here play on the drum machine, so that we just have an idea what's actually going on. So if this is one bar, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, it starts here, yeah? This is the one, and the easiest thing that we could do is just play a very simple 16-step sequence. Okay, now you see what I'm just doing here is every step here is a note. If I put it in the middle and it doesn't light up, it just simply doesn't play a note, yeah? Okay? Simple enough, very simple. So at the moment we're just triggering again our oscillator here. the length, of course, of the tone is done where? Here. So I can tell, I can say now, okay, nice one, but I want to have some kind of melody. So I will just put them down again and start to look for some notes here. This basically here works as a keyboard. You basically, when you say this is one note, this will be the next. And the next. Basically what I do here is I play keyboard really fast, but I don't have to do it. The machine is doing it for me. And so again I can cancel out a couple of notes to make it a little more funky. This other part here, stop it for some while. So what I do here is I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is basically one octave, one time around. So I can go from the C to the next C, and then in the other row here, I have a transpose option. That means I can transpose every single note for that value, for that what a note is playing at the moment. So if I'm using this full octave, if I use a up octave and a down octave, I'm actually already having 3 octaves on my hand, which is, you know, quite probably most what you would use in a thing like this. So let's do that. So I'd say if I want to have a transposition to up, I can also decide how much up it should go. Now I go 6 notes up, but I can go a full octave. So it's transposing a full octave of the note here actually. Same thing works for, of course, for down. So I'm playing 3 octaves with just this one row. Here I have a pitch that can actually, I can actually make an overall pitch. I can transpose the whole line down or up. So everything follows, that works here, everything follows here. I put it down for now, because we are used to it now. The second line here is a line that it's basically free assignable. So you see it's basically following the same path here, and it's a little bit different. This one here, I go from note to note to note to note to note, yeah? This one here is free. It just has a middle section, and I can go down and up. And for example, what I showed before with the filter, we can also do with this line. Just a sec. Any questions in the meantime about the sequencer, about this first thing of putting in notes?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, yes.
I didn't get how you connected the the drum machine to the thing.
Oh, that's just MIDI clock.
Okay.
I mean, it's a MIDI out into MIDI in, and basically the drum machine doesn't just start the sequencer.
Okay.
It's the master clock. Yeah, that's just MIDI clock. So basically, the drum machine here sends out the clock signal whenever I start the machine. the sequencers running in the same time. It's really a feature that every machine basically has. No, the sequencer basically has MIDI as well, and can be the master for MIDI, but can also be slaved to another thing. So normally, if I would work in the with the computer in the studio or with the drum machine, I would slave the sequencer, because it's much easier on the drum machine to change the tempo and stuff like this than changing tempo. You know, if you've seen me working away with these little knobs here. So it's really cool if the sequencer just follows the master clock of the studio, obviously.
No, but, is this thing have a MIDI channel? Like, can you assign it, for example, for the first channel and then trigger it, or you just trigger it when you play?
You can right now, as I explained before, we're using it as with this old school controlling way. We're using it with CV and gate. Yeah, that means the gate here tells exactly when the event is happening, and the CV actually tells what is happening, what kind of note the oscillator here, you know, should play. So basically we have these two controls, but it's also possible to control a MIDI keyboard, like normal MIDI keyboard with this sequencer. But it's of course now it's not as good to show with a MIDI what's actually happening with MIDI. So CV and gate is much more graphic to show actually how the modules work. For example, if I want to get those cables here somewhere. For example, if I want to control something here with this second row, I have the possibility of controlling, for example, a filter within the groove of the track, because it's following basically the same kind of steps that you have here. So I take the control voltage out here, and you remember when I put in an LFO earlier on into the filter, it sounded like this. Basically you have the filter here, and this little red light now, it's opening and closing the filter, but not in time. Which is the nice thing sometimes, you know, because you get like this kind of polyrhythmic feel to it. You know, and but the thing is, if you want to do this in time, actually with the rhythm, it's better to actually use this second row and do it like this. So on this side, I'm closing the filter. On this side, I'm opening it up. I can explain like this. So that it basically works for every step. So what I could do is, I could close everything down. So now you can hear that the filter is really closed, like I would turn it down with the hand. And then I can just go, I switch everything on now, and can just highlight a couple of so it's just coming up on this parts where I want it to come up.
The little buttons on top, like the metal ones, they have 3 steps. One more up.
You mean this one?
Yeah, they have 3 steps as well. So
yes.
Down is on. In the middle, it's just that one that stops. And if you put it all the way up, that's the break for everything else.
Good question. Here we go. Okay. Maybe I should have told this a little earlier, but okay, here we go. As you can see, when I push this little button down, the sound will go off at this point. If I put it in the middle,
it stops that one if you put it
it
up.
doesn't stop. It just doesn't play the sound. And there's another position that I didn't say. It's the reset position. When I put it here, it will just go out till
That's what I
there.
meant.
So when you with the beat. But I can put it like to other different things, like to a 6. So it's playing like 6 steps. So I can basically this tells me when the sequence ends, but it always stays. It kind of like always stays within the loop. Yeah. So now we have like a normal 16. Okay, back to the so this is understood. Yeah, like okay. So we go back to the filter. So there's like some parts where I can actually use this line to control my filter. Let's put a second. Second voice to it, sounds nice. So basically, what we hear now here is just the left side of the synthesizer. We can also go and put on the right side. So I can basically just if I want to control more than one thing with the same kind of controller here, like this row, I have to use this part down here. It's basically just like a mix of various things, like for like control voltage or for triggers. You can use it for all kinds of things that will give me the possibility to actually take one controller, put it in here, and then use this, take it up here, use this on different filters. So I can use it actually on that filter, and I can also use it on that filter simultaneously. So it would be like one is doing a high pass, the other one is doing a low pass. So I can actually use the same kind of pattern to control two sides of the band from each filter. If I turn this up. interesting thing is when you start to mix the sources of modulation. So let's say you would have like a line that it's basically always modulating in the same style, yeah, as it goes through. And now I'm going to take like one of those free running LFOs here. They are not linked to the sequencer, they're just free running. And then I'm gonna mix the synchronized filter movement to the unsynchronized movement, so I get some sense of like not always repeating the same pattern. I get some kind of random filter effect, but at the same time that always will stay within the beat. Yeah. So you see, you can hear this modulation, but you still hear the modulation coming from here. Any question on the modulation side?
Yeah, I got something. Does it? Yeah, there you go. Does he have like? Can you do like filter envelopes on single notes? Like, does he have that?
No.
No. Fair enough.
Yeah. But what you can do is here in this thing you can put a general envelope for the filter. You can do this the way how the filter comes in, you know, just on that side. Like I said, it's a quite simple rough piece. So you cannot do like with plugins nowadays. Yeah. You have like filter envelopes on every single note. That's a little bit out of the question at that time when this machine was actually built. But what you could do with in this part here, you could actually put modulation on every single step. That means I can go like and say I only want to have this one note modulated, so I'm gonna put the modulation into this. Yeah. It's gonna modulate only this one thing. So it's there are some nice ways to work around that flaws of the machine. But in general, it's really basic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but did he have like the one that you said that he has right there? Yeah. So that's like you could put in like filter attacks on. So each note will be played like, you know, like.
Each. I mean, you can. I can show it to you. Just a second.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to find a way where it's really good hearable. Okay, here we got the envelope for the sound itself. Usually you should be able to set to set it, but it's a bit of a beast.
There you go.
And maybe it's just a little bit more too subtle to hear, or maybe it broke on the plane. I have no idea, but it's not working at the moment. But you should usually be able to set the filter envelope that's controlled here. So one envelope for the whole side of the synth.
No, but yeah, that's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Thanks.
Sorry for that. That's not cool right now, but
No, fair enough.
yeah. So now, if we listen to this, the thing we have like a 16 note sequence going now. In this case, we can also set the sequencer to variable speed. That means if I push here from 16th clock, it will go into an 8, and then now here I can adjust each length of each trigger. And it will wait until the end for the so you can get like really weird kind of.
Excuse me. Have you got like? Can you do triplets and 5s and 7s and?
Yeah, if you spend enough time of like selecting like the reset and then selecting it's like really subtle changes here. Yeah, so you can actually really, if you have a groove and if you want to make it work to it, it's a lot of little fiddling of the note length. So basically, you can do, if you have the time, and you know, you can actually make it fit to all kinds of groove. It's just a little bit of fiddling around with it. But for example, here you can. So it's waiting till the end. When this here is all the way to the right, it's waiting for the next one. So it's basically you get rid of the sequencer feeling with this. You can actually program some bass lines or do like some, you know, or just use it for filter movements, for audio material or something like this. And the interesting thing, everything here that says VC is voltage controlled. What we have down here, for example, is we have a voltage controlled oscillator. That means I have a low frequency oscillator that's meant to be used for modulation, again for filters or stuff like this. But I can also voltage control this LFO in its speed. So that gives me, for example, very interesting possibilities here on that. If I'm using that part here, if I'm using, let's switch it back. If I'm using actually an LFO to mess with the time of the sequencer, because now it's running on MIDI nodes, but I can also go ahead and let it just transfer the trigger that I give out to the synthesizer here. I can mess around with the timing like this, and I again can use modulation for the timing itself, not just for modulating the oscillator or the filter or something like this, but for the timing itself. And it needs a little setup. I get a gate out here, so I'm gonna use this one gate as the base for my trigger, yeah. So this would be to control from the sequencer here, the gate, to the synthesizer. Take it from here, put it in here. So basically what happens, same thing we had before. If I don't use this one, and if I would use one of those LFOs here with the square wave, it would just give me sometimes so actually I'm still playing the notes at the right time, but I'm not playing the trigger at the right time. So what I can now do is I can find an interesting mixture about the right time and the wrong time. So it will always stay in time, but at the same time it will correspond to this random time. The more I put from random time, the more kind of like random triggering I get. Yeah, I'm back to random. And now what I can do is actually I can use this second row here where we did the filter before. Right. I will use the second row here, not to only to control the filter to control the filter frequency, but I will use this row to control actually the speed of the LFO, which actually then again is manipulating my time. So basically I have a closed circle of manipulating actually the time on various nodes. So let me get this cabled here just really quick. So again, this is the output of the second row here. I take it and I put it into the control voltage of the LFO. So you see when I open up the control that the triggering here is changing in order to the node that I just have. Here it gets slower. Here it gets faster. Can you see that somehow? I know it's really hard to see probably from the back and from that side. So what I can do now is I can I can mess around with the timing, actually not only in general, but I can do it on every note. So let's see how it sounds. Again, that's our normal timing. And now we put this timing to it. And now we can go like, you see, now we can change the speed of the LFO actually according to the note where we are. So that's a nice and easy way to get away from this kind of like really static sequencer aesthetic that you normally have. And the good thing about it is, it's not only working with this machine. When you open up, for example, on all of the computers upstairs, there is this Moog Modular V installed, which is like a software version of the Moog of a Moog modular system. It also comes with the analog sequencer. Basically, all these kind of things that you have here with modulating time, modulating filters and oscillators, you can also do this on this on this virtual model. So it's not only a feature of this specific machine. It's basically, it can be done on that as well. You can check it out. I think it's installed on all of the computers, so you can also try this out. So mainly, what the advantage is of this, that you can actually, when you cable this, and when you select some modulation for some parts, you can actually see where the sound is going. It's not an abstract number or something that you type in and then something happens. But I think if you want to learn about synthesis in general, like how a synthesizer is built up, actually what is every part doing, a modular synthesizer is actually not a bad way to start, because it's very visual and you can actually see what's going on. And of course, not everyone can go out and buy a Döpfer, which would be a recent available synthesizer, but all the simulations, like the Moog or something like this, or there's an ARP 2500 modular synthesizer as a plugin on the computers. They are really, really nice platforms to learn, actually, and to maybe see if you want to go out one day or something and maybe buy a modular synthesizer if you want to do some things. So it's actually looks a little complicated in the beginning, but I think it's a really nice way to learn synthesis in general. Yeah.
Can you tell more about the thing at the bottom, CV mixer, isn't it?
Basically, it's really simple. It's like any kind of mixer, summing mixer or audio mixer. You can down here, yeah, down here you can put in any kind of signal that you want. You can put in an audio signal and distribute it to up here. So it's basically, in this case, I have one control going out here from that middle row, but I have, let's say, a lot of things that I want to, and I could control with this. I could control two filters, I could control frequency modulation on the oscillators, and so on and so on. So I have to find some way in basically splicing up these cables into a couple of copies, and also then mixing it together. Like you saw, for example, if I use this for the filter, yeah, and I can actually take two modulation signals, one coming from the sequencer, one coming from a free-running LFO, and I can mix these things together. If I would like to do it here on this one filter, I would need some kind of mixer here, because I can not splice this cable up, and I cannot put two different controls into one jack. So it's basically just a way of distributing signals within the machine. On the right side here, it's a little bit of a different story. This is basically 4 audio inputs. It's meant for audio because they are distributed here to the left side of the synthesizer, and this is distributed to the right side of the synthesizer. So I can go in with 4 different audio signals, and I can just go like, okay, this goes to the left, this goes to the right, this goes to both, and this goes to here, and it will go into the synthesizer and go and come on here to the onto the envelope follower, so I can process external audio signals actually through the synthesizer, which is really nice because when I play with this machine live. I travel around with it, so that's why I'm never sure if it's broken or not, because they treat this like really bad on the plane, of course. The thing is, when I play, for example, with bands, you can like take a microphone, put it up to the drums, put it in here, and have your the ability to filter some drums, or you can put like a bass in. So when I play with the band, for example, it's really always hard to play with the live band because they have their own timing and their own tuning when they improvise. So with the sequencer, I'm sorry. With the sequencer or general with the laptop or something like this, it's always really hard to get integrated into the session because you kind of like, you're tapping away and then they play and then it works and then it doesn't. So I just found a way to actually convert, let's say, an incoming audio signal here into a trigger signal. So the same way I'm just using this. So when the drummer is playing a dung 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 dung, I get a trigger signal just by him playing the beat, and my sequencer will run automatically to the kind of beat from the drummer. And so I never have to worry that I'm like out of time. If he plays some crazy stuff, then of course, the thing will go wild as well. But it's kind of nice, So you basically can play actually within a session with other musicians without being, having to worry that you kind of like have to keep the tempo, or everyone has to. There's nothing worse with the session than everyone has to play to a click, just because my machine is running on a click, So. It's a little chaotic, but it's also a kind of nice and simple way to play with other music and
So you can
cope with unexpected situations.
So you can have like a dry send and a wet send and have
Yeah.
them both, or switch in between as well.
Yes.
Which is really cool.
I can also decide, let's say, okay, one of the sides will follow the sequencer, like following a drummer or something like this, or it works with bass, with everything, whatever is there that can actually generate a trigger. And on the other side, I can maybe just use the filter and filter like a trumpet thing, or filter some vocals or something like this. So.
And you can do four sends.
You can do 4 signals with this. Yes.
That's working.
Yeah.
So you can do that without adding any synthetic tone to it?
Yeah, you can. I mean, if you turn down the oscillator here, if you turn them down like this, the only thing you will hear is the signal which comes in to the filter, and the only thing you will hear is the filter. But of course, you can, when you get a like an external trigger going, and your sequencer runs in the selected strange way of the drummer playing, then of course you can again make the same thing that we did now, and you can again apply, let's say, filter to the trumpet that is going through the other filter. So basically, the beat in which the filter is modulating is not in your hand, it's within the band, and that's what makes it really nice, because it's actually more interaction than when you always, like trying to set the kind of way the modulation and the sequencing is going.
Could you explain how to make long and short notes individually instead of using the envelope? Like you have the tie notes, or?
The thing is with CV and gate, There is a way to do it with MIDI on this machine. You can use it's a question of programming, but you can use, for example, the third row to make individual long and short notes. The problem with CV and gate is that it gives you a trigger and then it plays. So I have no control with CV and gate with these two cables over the individual length of the note. What I could do is I could modulate my VCA, my amplifier at the end for the whole thing, and I could kind of make a simulation of making short and long notes. But in this configuration with CV and gate only, there is no way in doing.
So you can make like staccato or legato notes, like boom, gook, 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 like.
Not in this configuration. No, I can do it with MIDI, because then I have just the MIDI control for it to make a load long and short, load long and short, but not only with the CV and gate, because I would need a third row to control actually the length of every individual note.
But playing with a keyboard, you can.
Oh, of course, yes. Playing with the keyboard, you can, because when you play with the keyboard, you can decide if you stay long on it or short. But you know, this I can't do in whole if I set one envelope here, but I can't do it individually, because otherwise I would need a third control. I would need CV, gate, and a control for the length of every individual note. I mean, I can work my way around it with some things, but it's not part of the actual configuration. Yeah.
Can you tell more about triggering the sequencer with drums, for example? When you trigger, for example, one drummer hit
Yes.
like snare, it's being triggered and it starts to play, isn't it?
You can set it on different modes. You can say, okay, when he hits the drums, it starts to play. But that doesn't make very much sense, because when it just starts to play, it will play in its own speed again. Yeah. You know. So what you could do is say, okay, whenever there is something hit or whenever a trigger is coming in, it will play in its own speed, and when the next one comes, it will start again. So it makes some kind of
matching.
Yes, it makes some kind of very.
And you can shorten the sequence enough.
You can shorten the sequence on 1 and 2
notes or
yes,
3
of
notes.
course. So it's more like an effect thing. You can do like a slapback or something like this. But if you want the sequencer to follow the beat, you would have to go and, let's say, so whenever there is a signal and a trigger coming, it's playing one note. So you're actually stepping with the trigger coming in. You're stepping along here on the timeline. I can show this to you really quick. Just a sec.
There's no latency between the signal coming in and the thing being triggered.
Nah, not necessarily. No, I mean, you know, when you come in here with an external sound, let's take it from the drum machine for now. So this is the output of the drum machine here, just the basic beat that we heard before. Okay, and now here I get oh, you can do it here as well. Okay, you can see now here I can distribute this audio signal from the drum machine to the left side, which we actually hear right now. So you see that there's a mix now. There's a trigger generated here. You can see that there's a trigger generated here, and the signal is coming through. So we have a mix. We have just this, and there is a trigger generated at the same time. So if I, for example, if I take if I take this out here, and so it's not getting any information now from the drum machine, but the drum machine is still running. Okay, the trigger thing isn't working. I don't know why, but that would be the usual case. So we basically know what can be done here. We basically know how the sequencer works. This here is just a filter bank for each side, so it's basically just a 10-band or something filter, so nothing really mysterious or spectacular. Any other questions on the machine itself? Yeah, I think it's on.
You know the middle, all the dials, those 6 dials. Can you just tell us what each one is called and just
Yes.
give us a little obvious demonstration?
Okay, let's do it. For that, I think I will get it going again here. Okay. On the oscillator side, again, we have the waveform here that we can mix. Output basically just mainly how loud the module is. Then you have a tuning, a coarse tuning. That goes from all the way down to all the way up. Then you have a fine tuning to actually tune it to whatever you have, to your track or to your instrument or whatever. So you can fine tune every oscillator, which is very important because they go out of tune really easy. So whenever you have a really good thing that fits to your music, grab it, record it, take it somehow, because like you can twiddle around, you can recall nothing. Once it's gone, it's gone. It's the magic of the moment. And so tuning your oscillators before you actually start working with it, it's kind of important, because later on, if you want to play some bass with it, if you want to play some guitar on it, it kind of like has to be in tune. So what you can actually do is just with the normal tuner, with the guitar tuner, you just go like and tune your every oscillator, let's say, to C or whatever, and from there then you can go down and up. So basically this is this. Up here you have FM, which means frequency modulation. Again, that's a modulation input, and you can grab, for example, a free running LFO here, and when you turn it up, it will be modulated. It will modulate the frequency of the oscillator, not only by the note it is playing, but also with this. And again, it really depends on the form. Square wave switches it kind of on and off. Of course, you could also use it with any other modulation available. Then here we have the bandwidth of the square wave. So it basically regulates the wideness of the square wave. You have this on every other analog machine, the same thing. And then here you have a band-wide modulation, which basically does the same thing again to be able to modulate what I just did manually. So I can switch it from broad. It's basically doing this, but just not with your hand. Okay, so this basically works for all these things the same. With the filter, again, we can check this out with the filter. Here you make the filter down and up, the frequency. Then they have an envelope here for this filter. That means. That was actually the problem which worked before. Here I can decide how much of the filter actually goes onto the filter envelope. But it looks really like my filter envelope has taken a beating on the plane. Yeah. And here you have the Q factor, which is a resonance, self-resonance of the filter. You have a warm filter without the resonance. And here again, you have the modulation again. In the same way you modulate the frequency on the oscillator, you basically can modulate the frequency of the filter. And here you have just an external sound input. That means you can come from any other source externally as well, and you can put it like directly into the filter without going through any of the other devices. So I can, for example, take some white noise here and actually add the white noise to the filter. At least I thought. Yeah. Obviously it's taking some beating. So you can go like with any outside with another waveform or with some audio signal or with a sample or whatever. You can go directly into the filter and basically let it run through the filter. So that works with all the modules here. Here you have the envelopes. These are all outputs. As I said, this is a VCA. This is a voltage-controlled amplifier, which basically tells you how loud the overall sound from this side is amplified. You can also control this, again, with voltage control. And down here, the envelope follower that basically generates a trigger, if you want it. More LFOs, ring modulation. The phase shifter is really very weak on that machine. Normally, it's also like a phase kind of thing, which is a modulation, and sample and hold and noise, a noise generator. So I mean, there's a lot more to explain specifically. It's really hard to keep it kind of general, but I will have the machine up there, and it's anyway available for everybody to play along. There is nothing. Actually, don't be afraid when you cable, because there's nothing you can do wrong. You cannot break it. So you can take this and put it in there, and the worst thing that's going to happen is that nothing is going to happen. So just try it out and just freak around with it. Ask me if you have a question. It's quite a big field. There are quite unlimited possibilities. So. No. What we're gonna do is we will set up a little small DJ mixer, just to have a headphone output. So whenever other people work in the studio and the synthesizer is not needed, you can sit down with the headphone, or you can come with your PowerBook, just get it to record, and then you can just generate some noises, some frequencies, record it onto your computer if you want to, and then use it further on. So I think that's about it. I can try to make understood in such a public way. I know it's a little bit hard to follow sometimes, but if you have once you have your hands on it, and if you try it yourself, you will see it's very much self-explaining.
And how does the phase shifter work?
Yeah, I was expecting that question. Basically, it's another modulation. You can go in with the signal, and then you can basically double up the signal and kind of like put it into phase. Make some kind of nice. You can make some kind of nice flanging effect. So you can put something. It's a. But it's. I mean, you can try it, but this one is a really weak one. I mean, there are other systems that have really good ones, like Moog phase shifters, for example, or so on, are really nice. But this one is particularly not really a good one. To be honest, I just put it in because otherwise I would have a hole in here. So, yeah.
Can I use my
Microphone.
Can I use my voice from a microphone, like a signal for external modulation?
Yes, you can do this. You can use. These are basically line inputs here. They work with line signal. If you want to use your voice.
Voice or other instruments, like a guitar.
To control the sound. Yes, you can do this. You can also do this here, because the envelope follower is not just giving out a trigger, it's giving out a trigger and an envelope.
Okay.
So basically you have a trigger signal and then you have an envelope. So you can control some of the stuff when you patch it in a certain way. You can control like filters and some of the stuff actually by external audio, which also means voice.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Can you tell more about the way of the signal goes of these modules?
Okay. Yeah, basically most of the synthesizers, most of the modular synthesizers, they have a kind of basic structure, basic cabling inside. So that means even if there is no cable on here, the way would be like the oscillator goes into the filter, and the filter and the oscillator is controlled by the envelope, of course, and then the audio signal goes into the filter, and this goes out through the amplifier at the end. So it's basically just, here is the signal, here it's filtered, and here it's put out. So it's a very, very basic structure. And when you can see, we have no cable on here, and you know we have our thing running, and it's working without actually a cable put on. So whenever, let's say, whenever I put something in here in these machines, then it will modulate the certain part where I put it in. But basically, if you have a CV and a gate cable attached to this, it will play. So that's it. I'm exhausted. So thank you.